My Literacy Narrative by Lyndsi Kohls. My literacy narrative sparked when I was lucky enough to go to Guatemala this past February. I traveled to multiple cities within Guatemala, staying at a new hotel each night. I was also lucky enough to attend this trip with my mom, who was there for me when I was actually learning how to read and write as a child. This was so important to me. I went on this 2.5-week trip with a group called Cooperative for Education. This group was founded by two brothers named Jeff and Joe Berninger. Their mission is to break the cycle of poverty through education. They attempt to do this by bringing textbooks, computers, and other school supplies to the schools who don't have the funds for them or can't get them due to being located up in the mountains. Their main goal is for the schools to be self-sustainable after a few years of Cooperative for Education, helping them get on their own 2 feet. While I was in Guatemala for 2.5 weeks, we traveled to many different schools in the surrounding cities. We visited over 10 schools, all which were located up in the mountains. At the schools, we would read to the kids in English to help them learn. They would also read to us in either Spanish or the little amount of English that they did know. This helped them to become more confident readers. They really only knew Spanish, but some did know a family dialect. Some would know a little English, but the majority did not. This obviously caused a large language barrier. As you can see in this picture, there are three translators up on the stage. There is someone from co-ed who translated the Spanish to English for us, but also someone from the school who would translate the Spanish into a Mayan dialect, which was different at each school. This was because a lot of the parents who attended these functions didn't speak Spanish. This was when I realized how poor these cities were and how underdeveloped their school systems is. As you can see, the school looks more like an outdoor play area than a school building. Co-ed would also try to bring different items to the school. For example, we brought bookshelves to many of the schools and also desks to another school. This was a great gesture and something everyone was able to appreciate. Since there was a large language barrier, we would always resort to playing games. At each school, once we would run out of small conversation, either due to my lack of Spanish skills or their lack of English skills, we would start playing games. These included bubbles, soccer, basketball, thumb wars, and even games that they were able to teach us once we got there. This shows that games are universal and easily relatable to everyone. These games are something everyone knows and is a way for us to connect without using verbal communication. At the time, I did not realize that this was improving my literacy narrative, but now looking back and after learning about discourses, I can see that it definitely was. This trip allowed me to meet so many people that I never would have met before. For instance, this is my friend Madeline, who I made a very deep connection with during the day that I spent with her. I was given the opportunity to dive into a culture I was unfamiliar with and become familiar. Through this, I was able to add a discourse into my life. I consider the citizens of Guatemala, along with those who attended the trip with me, to be some of the most influential people in my life. While I was there, I was given the opportunity to send an individual child, Lesvia Chulak, to school for the next 6 years so that she can graduate high school. I was also given the chance to understand how the women of Guatemala work and make a living for themselves and for their families. This was so interesting because I was able to see how different their lives were since they did not have a complete education. This was one of the main reasons why I wanted to send Lesvia to school. One thing I also learned so much about was their dancing. In Guatemala, it is customary to dance for any guest that you have. This was also nice because dancing is like games in a way. Dancing is like games in the sense that everyone can understand and appreciate the movement. This also doesn't require verbal communication but allows us to connect to one another. I learned so much culture and diversity while in Guatemala that I will forever be grateful for. Without this trip, I wouldn't have been more interested to continue traveling and helping others.